Dr. Bhakti Vijnana Muni is a sannyasi from Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math. This is in Kolkata? Navadip, okay. He completed his PhD in chemical engineering. So apart from being a Swami, he is also an engineer from IIT Kharagpur. So a lot of IIT professionals are into even sainthood and a lot of other spiritual activities. Our own chairman is from IIT, so we are, it is your fraternity. He is also Vedavedi Vibhushana, so. We are in the same college. Yes, that's very nice to understand. He is a devotee, servitor in the Gaudiya Vaisnava Parampara under Srila Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Maharaja. Srila Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaja, Srila Bhakti Niskama Shanta Maharaja, PhD and others. He has been engaged in serving the Scientific Sankirtan Mission. He has assisted devotees of and Acharyas in organizing Vedanta and Science conferences since 2005. So it's almost 20 years now. Right. He has also served in Publications Department of Scientific Preaching Mission since 2001. After completing formal education, he is fully dedicated in writing, traveling, as well as preaching missions all over India. And in that context, he is also here with us, and we are blessed to have him today. After completing formal education, he is fully dedicating in writing, traveling, as I've already said, all over India, Nepal, and other countries. His view on science, spirituality, and life could be understood from his own words. Vedanta approaches the question of reality from a systematic concept of pramanas or evidence. The Vedantic ontology consists of truths like jiva, that is living entity, bhagavan, that is supreme personality of Godhead, and prakriti, that is nature, as well as transcendental reality, Cid-vilasa. Man has also produced scientific worldviews according to their capacities. Many scientific worldview accepts only efficient and material causes, that is nimitta and upadana karana, but resorts to randomness as a certain for production of entities such as living forms, universe, planets, and laws. However, modern evidence in biology confronts such naivety. Science cannot accommodate concepts like free will and consciousness in its mechanistic framework. Vedanta explains that the basis of reality is personality. Reality progress in the form of resolution of contradictions, which for a long time was denied in logic and science. But with the advent of QM, the role of observer and simultaneous conceptualization of contradictory truths was necessary. We need new logic and new ontological foundations to overcome the problems in science and mathematical formulations. Vedanta offers valid solutions to these, and it has always accommodated this dialectic as well as offered philosophical basis based on its system of evidence to guide mankind towards completeness of knowledge and fulfillment of life. So you have a wonderful audience here who are experts in maths, algorithms, logic, and we have Professor Rajan, who has completed his book on Brahma Sutras using algorithms, maths, and logic. That's a wonderful book that he has written. Yes, so you have people who have logic, you have people who have maths, you have people who have algorithms who can also contribute to your works. Thank you so much. Please bless us.
Thank you, sir, and especially my sincere pranams to Dr. Rajan, who is not only a spiritual person, but in IIT Kanpur, he was with very distinguished faculties in those days, and he has kept his fire alive. And also our Acharya, Srila Bhakti Niskama Shanta Maharaj, and all the distinguished guests, I offer my sincere pranams to all of you. So let me just say a single prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ananda Leela Maya Vigrahaya Himava Dibya Chabi Sundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Thank you. So, actually, when chemistry was making some progress, people were very excited, and somehow they thought that we could explain life in terms of chemical processes. However, we are seeing so many limitations today that it becomes necessary to think deeply about what science we should understand, approach to understand what is life, which is existing reality. In front of us, we are all living, but we don't know what life is. So here is the periodic table. So the question is, we have these basic elements here, but why a single organism, we have no mechanism to produce from this starting set of elements? Why the program of abiogenesis has not been demonstrated? Although it is being taught in all textbooks in school, that in the beginning there was a warm little pond and then life came by some chance combinations. So unless you demonstrate, it doesn't become a science. So here is the picture of McClintock. She got the Nobel Prize in 1983. And she was from, I think, Cornell University. And people called her like a crazy lady, mad lady, because she never accepted the central dogma of Crick and Watson. But when she gave the Nobel Prize, she has given not a linear logic. She has given a circular logic of genetic or the cellular phenomena. So she was saying, in future, attention undoubtedly will be centered on the genome, and with a greater appreciation of its significance as a highly sensitive organ of the cell. So I've put it in a different color after that, because the idea changes from there. The cell, monitoring the genomic activities and correcting common errors, sensing the unusual and unexpected events, and responding to them, often by restructuring the genome. So the control is not a linear chain, but rather it's a circular phenomena. So without linearization, life is not reduced to mechanism, as was the program of the geneticists, and before that after 19, because it started with the idea of Darwin actually, but that mechanism was never established in science. So we know about the component of genomes that could be made available for such restructuring. We know nothing, however, about how cell senses danger and instigates responses to it that are often truly remarkable. So she used to say that the cell is very thoughtful. Okay, thank you. Fine. So then our question is, how complete is our understanding of heredity? So all studies of genetically modified organisms have required an intact cell structure for the introduction of new genetic information by DNA or nuclear transplantation. This is first thing. So it is not a linearity or you have not produced any kind of life process by starting with only molecules. You already require an organism which is full already, complete, and then you can do some manipulations at genetic level. So Rudolf Virchow, therefore, articulated it in 1858, and still it is true. Omnis cellula est cellula. Every cell comes from a cell. So this is the ontology of life or cell. We still do not adequately understand the role that pre-existing cell structures and organelles play in templating the formation of the descendants in progeny of the cells. So man has put its entire almost attention on the genome, because this is spoken by James Shapiro, just like a man searching for his lost key under a lamppost, because he cannot see the vast forest, but he is seeing something of the forest under the lamppost. So he thinks that all information must be under the lamppost. But the forest is vast, but his entire focus is only on the genome or on the DNA structure. So that's why he is not able to search the key of life. So this is the picture of central dogma. This was given by Crick and Watson in 1958. Actually, in the beginning, he said only from DNA to RNA to protein, a single line. Then he changed it in 1970. He put one line from RNA to DNA back, and RNA to RNA, and DNA to DNA. But he said, never from protein, any information can travel back to DNA, or from protein to RNA. It will be impossible. Because if it is shown in nature, such a thing happens, it would mean that there is no mechanistic explanation of life in terms of genetics or genomics. And that's what they understood, because there are so many reactions now. In 21st century, we can see the proteins are involved in so many reactions affecting the nuclear structure here. So it is that kind of idea of Crick and Watson is no longer valid, but we talk with many biologists, so they are a little bit sentimental about it. But as far as reality goes, you must accept what is the evidence, that we don't have a mechanistic linear logic going on in living processes. Fine. So I try to point out some differences. But the main thing that I want to point out is that there is the idea of self-determination in organisms. Organisms determine their own fate, or what they want to do, what they not want to do. Whereas a machine will be always determined by an external causative agent. In Vedanta also it is mentioned, this knowledge, there is a Sanskrit word for that, it's called prakash. So the living organisms are so prakash, they can know themselves, they have that ability. Whereas non-living things have no concept of themselves. Only a living or external agent can know something about them. But the living entity has something extra, he can know himself. Swaprakash, this is the difference. In English language we say self-determination. This is there in philosophy also. So this is the shift in the worldview. Student of McClintock, Shapiro, he says the cognitive informatic view of how the living cells operate and utilize their genome is radically different from the genetic determinism perspective articulated most succinctly in the last century by Crick and his famous idea called central dogma of molecular biology. So this is the great irony of the scientific thinking of last century, that the molecular biology, which its pioneers expected to provide a firm chemical and physical basis for understanding life, instead uncovered powerful sensory and communication networks essential to all vital processes. So today we have many informatic concepts defining genomics. So you can see so many new ideas. These are all informatic concepts. They were not there before the 1950s. But after that, these have proliferated. How many informatic ideas we have to use just to explain even simple things? So now another question is that in Vedanta, the number of life forms is fixed. But in modern science, according to Darwinian concepts, the number of life forms should have been infinite. But in nature, we always find some limitation in the number of species. So we know 84 life forms expressed in Vedanta, in Padma Purana. In science, there are some conflicting reports, anything between 8.7 million and higher, because many areas they don't know what if there are some life forms in oceans, in deep oceans, or in outer space. So the question is open-ended. But there is no mention that there should be an unlimited life forms. If that was so, we could find it in nature. So this is the one of the ideas that is causing many scientists to rethink about the whole thing. So sometimes they're asking, like this Platonic concept of forms. Like the idea is, before Darwin, biologists adhered to a Platonic model of nature, finite set of intrinsic and immutable natural forms of eternal world order. So, but as we find in modern advances, let's say in protein chemistry, that also suggests that number of protein folds are fixed or quite limited, not very high in number. But actually, if it was randomness was the only thing, it should be unlimited. But why we only about 4,000 or even lesser? That is a little bit perplexing to the many of the thinkers. And so some of them want to think in terms of pre-Darwinian ideas like the Platonic concepts. So, so this is one of the important projects that was developed, the Evo-Devo program. Evo means the evolutionary concepts, which were supposed to be the cause of living diversity. So because they could not answer, they combined it with development. Development means embryology. And from that, they tried to answer some of the things. But there also they hit some end. It seems that the phenotypic end state seems to have greater importance than the maintenance of the pathways by which these states can be reached. That means the number of life forms don't seem to proliferate very quickly over time. So that means the body plans suggest that there is an interplay between constraint and evolvability. Traditionally, evolutionary theory accounts only for microevolutionary changes. The larger variations were left out of that program. So particularly major changes such as origin of body plans are more structured than predicted by traditional neo-Darwinian theory based on population genetics and adaptation. Thus he reasoned that there is some other underlying mechanism or mechanisms that account for evolutionary change. The existence of body plans and their relatively rapid emergence and their conservations since they first appeared are not disputed. That means nature is conserving the life forms rather than the evolutionary idea that everything is diversifying. So if that is the case, the question arises, what advantages nature has in conserving the life forms? So this is the question. So therefore, we have to come up with some philosophical questions here. Plato talked about the theory of forms. That means, his idea is that there are some forms in nature that theory of ideas asserts that substantial forms or ideas are, and not the material world of change known to us through sensation, possesses the highest and most fundamental kind of reality. So, Plato was born at a time when there were many materialists in those days. They didn't believe in next life or some such concepts. And at that time, he had to bring such ideas to challenge their existing viewpoints. So he said that the forms are the only true objects of study that can provide us with genuine knowledge. So here are many questions because we say in nature whatever we see has some form, and there is also some substance, that is matter to it. So what is the relation between form and matter? Why atom has that form? Why human beings have that form? Why water has that form? These are the fundamental questions. So can laws of physics, chemistry are sufficient to understand that? So I have mentioned few things here. Some people think form is important and somehow the form exerts matter, and somehow matter is and form are therefore externally related. Or you can see it in other way also. But the philosopher named Hegel, he gave a solution to this when he said that they form an organic unity. You cannot really separate form and content. They are always united in nature. So, which a form that Hegel also calls organic unity, or a unity in which various concrete and determinate parts participate as these concrete and particular parts in the production of a general whole. So, thing is that today we are too much trained in modern scientific ideas, which are partial kind of concepts, where everything is like different definition. Like you make one definition, you make another definition, and you try to correlate externally. But this kind of approach is seeing dead end, especially when such important questions are arising. Therefore, the ancients considered another type of logic system where, like today when we talk about logic, we have mechanical systems, chemical systems, and we don't think any other thing. In quantum theory also, at least the model part is deterministic, is mechanistic. The Hilbert space is a mathematical space. So whatever you deduce from that is mechanical. But they are coming to some dead ends, like when they have to account for non-locality. Then they think, what's happening? Or let's say, is it a problem of measurement that we cannot accurately describe things? Or it is inherent in nature? This type of questions are unanswered or perhaps unanswerable within this framework. But ancients didn't think like this. So they have a concept called organic whole, Purnam. That Vedantic idea is also organic whole. So this organic whole concept must be introduced in study of logic. So I don't have much time to enter into that, so I'm not entering. But you should. But it means that, for example, let's say a simple example: a seed is there, and a tree is there. So a tree is necessary for the seed to form, and similarly, a seed cannot form without the tree. Now, which is first and which is second, you cannot say first. This is called the circularity of logic. And second part is that if you break down the seed into pieces by making it powder, you can't get back the seed. That concept of unity is lost. But in nature, the unity is coming as a complete whole. No life form can be produced as far as experimental sciences are also concerned. There is no evidence for that you could produce a single life form by combination of chemicals. A life means its immediate existential symptom is that it is sentient. Means it possesses sensations, it possesses a choice, free will, determinations, it can determine for itself. These kind of ideas are characteristics of life. But they are never a characteristics of even a robot. Robot is programmed for what it is doing. So, and that program is having an external source. But what source is there for living organisms other than the concept of the species? It is a species which is producing itself as an individual, and it is going through the cycle of birth to death and then renewing itself as another member of that very species. This was called in German Gattung process. And actually Hegel used this logic to substantiate Kant's claim that there's internal telos, or internal purposiveness, that self-purposeness is there. Whereas in machines is always an external purpose. Somebody else has that purpose, so he made a machine for that. But an organism, who made an organism? In nature, we can't say that organism has any other external cause than the concept of the species. So this was understood by the ancient philosophers easily. But modern people can't understand. So we say ontologically there are distinctions. It will not be possible to reduce biological systems into chemical and mechanical forms. The mechanical forms have their logic, chemical forms have their logic. So that is a, I think, detailed topic. But in brief, we can say they are irreducible. So now this is the central point. What are we missing in modern science that we cannot connect with our ancient system of inner knowledge? The answer is this, that the absolute is sentient, means it is cognizant, it is all-knowing. But therefore, love or bhakti becomes fundamental to understand these things. Whereas in modern idea, what has happened is the concept, the idea and form have been ignored in this modern materialistic perspective. So therefore, this is forming a dualistic idea. That means we cannot find a unified concept. Always consciousness misses out of our physical theories. So therefore, this view is defective, incomplete, and impersonal. It doesn't talk about persons. Where is the idea of a personality in modern science? Which equation gives an equation for, say, love, affection, man, woman, etc.? How do you define by an equation? So we need a harmonizing principle, and in our tradition that has been given in a particular way. In other traditions like Ramanuja also it has been given. So we need a harmony of that. So that is our main thing. So the foundational questions in Vedantic traditions are these. First is, what is life? And that was a book written also by Schrodinger, Erwin Schrodinger. Then, what is this matter and this universe? And what is the relation with reality? That is sambandha. Relation means our relation with reality. That is the next question. So, in our traditions, Rupa Goswami has mentioned that mechanics is called yantra matrika vidya, machine concepts. And chemistry is called akara vidya. So these are understood in the ancient systems. In Vrindavan and Braja, this is well known. But, however, that was not enough to understand life, because life is another category. So, Vedantic view does not see the universe as a gigantic machine. It is based on the sentient concept of stage-wise development, following the logic of organic whole. So, for example, we have human-like concepts there, like Mahad Brahma, Mahad Yoni, and these type of ideas are introduced. Whereas modern science says that it is indeterminate, that physics cannot describe that initial state. Whether it is a problem of quantum mechanics or it is a problem of nature, we don't know in modern idea. But such ideas will not be sufficient, because forget about the universe. In front of you, there are organic wholes, the living forms. So we should understand what life is. Then, from that, we can understand higher topics also. So there are so many problems. I have said few things. And Heisenberg has expressed this problem of reductionism. There is no quantum world. There is only an abstract quantum physical description. It is wrong to think the task of physics is to find out how nature is. Physics concerns what we can say about nature. So nobody knows what an electron really is. But we have a description, a quantum mechanical description. When we say the quantum state, it collapses. And when we measure it, we see something like a line on a photographic plate. So that is just a certain, that part is there, the line on the plate, but the description that we are talking is actually our idea about what it is from our present knowledge systems. But we don't really understand or really see what it is. So what it means is that modern science has become concerned only with the observables, but they don't worry about the observer or one who is seeing or making the observation. So this is the picture of Julian Schwinger. He got the Nobel Prize in 1965, along with Feynman and along with Tomonaga. Feynman is very famous because he is very attractive in his education. But Schwinger was very deep. He has many more PhD scholars, and he has some difference of thought also. But yet, he has told one thing, that we send electrons, protons into various kinds of nucleons, where we perform experiments in which these particles enter in a certain very small region. We make no attempt to describe what goes on there, and simply try to finally characterize what emerges when the particles are separated again. Is the purpose of theoretical physics to be no more than a cataloging of all the things that can happen when particles interact with each other and separate? Or is it to be an understanding at a deeper level in which there are things that are not directly observable? One time he wrote a paper which was not acceptable by the APS journal. And then the APS journal suddenly critiqued him, saying, you have to be a nuclear physicist to understand these things. Then Schwinger answered, I am a nuclear physicist. So that kind of tussle is there between the best scientists also. I heard one interview of Gell-Mann, and Gell-Mann was so critical of Schwinger. And Gell-Mann, he formulated that Yang-Mills theory and all those, wonderful ideas later on which are involved in developments of quantum field theory. But he could not accept that the detailed mathematical descriptions which Schwinger was, generating. And so, therefore, in the higher physics world, there is no consensus. There is a lot of fight, disagreement going on there also. So that means consciousness becomes an enigma. Very difficult to understand what consciousness is. Most modern attempts to explain consciousness, such as those by Wigner, von Neumann, Penrose, Hameroff, and Stapp, focus around the quantum collapse and quantum coherence idea. But it is not clear what is so unique about consciousness aspect that it somehow for them happens in the brain and microtubules within the neurons. Science is today too much obsessed with the category of identity and neglects the category of specific differences or wisdom titan. That means, Ramanuja Acharya talked about Vishishta or Vishesha. Vishesha means particular, means identity in difference. So, but modern science being mechanistic, it thinks everything is identical. Like the parts are identical to themselves. They have no relation with the holistic system. So this fragmented concept means that we are not able to understand more than mechanisms in our study of sciences. So this is Aristotle. He gave the idea of, in logic, called what is known as excluded middle. So they said something like this is not possible. Something is and at the same time is not. Is not possible in logic. Or the negation of that is not possible. So this is called the law of excluded middle. But you should know that many of the philosophers didn't like it. In fact, this is in modern truth table of predicates, etc., propositions, this is understood as a valid, that means we are being influenced by this Aristotelian logic in modern mathematics also. But Aristotle had fight with Plato, and Plato didn't like certain things about Aristotle. So in that sense, he deviated from the previous philosophers. So in their logic, that is, for example, Heraclitus said that the change is the only constant. That means they talked about ideas like being and nothing both. It was, some people thought everything comes from nothing comes from nothing. But what was that nothing? And then the other side was the being. And what is the being? Then being something, those who are taking only one-sided logic, then they picture the reality as a fixed thing, as something fixed in time and space, etc. That's why they want to talk about reality in terms of fixed entities. But in logic, we have this idea of opposites, unity of opposites. And Ramanuja Acharya, he has preached that also, the unity of opposites. That's why he gave the idea of Visishta, or identity in difference. In Shankaracharya, there is only identity. But Ramanuja extended that. There is identity, but there is a difference within that. That's why it's called Vishishta Advaita, particular differences. So, modern logic has not understood that part. So that should be a research proposal, I would say, to undertake whether it is possible to include such logic in, I think Heraclitus was the champion of that, and he said that you don't step into the same river twice. That means, anyway, let's not go into the philosophical description. It is not prudent here. But that is a defect of modern understanding. So, but now we see in quantum mechanics, it makes possible to accept contradictions in logic. I don't remember now, but long ago I had seen, I think, one of the statements by, I think, Heisenberg or Schrödinger, where he made a reference to that. So, what we see in quantum theory, contradictions is no longer considered as impossible in the study of objects. Quantum systems require several complementary descriptions. When taken together, they appear paradoxical and contradictory. The main source of contradictions were obtained like from light, radiation, atom. So, and when the effect of Planck's constant becomes significant, we have to treat the Kantian objects as fictional. If quantum reality is really true, then the definition of objects will change. They are no longer Kantian in that sense. So we have to treat them as objects only in the quantum mechanical sense. So, ontology. There are two things, ontology and epistemology. Ontology means nature of being. So we have idea, the absolute is full in himself, and all existence originates from him, etc., etc. The holistic paradigm, it's not a mechanistic paradigm, it's a holistic paradigm. Complete comes from another complete. The biological paradigm is actually holistic paradigm, and logic is of life is dependent on life's own inner conceptual necessity, such as inner purpose and desire. So we have defined everything in terms of external causes, but we have not thought about the internal causality. So this is the problem, that we cannot understand what personality is, what is mind, because if you want to say, show me mind, then you cannot show the mind as a rock. You can only talk in terms of concepts. So this kind of study has been ignored, rather. So then epistemology, there are 5 levels. Modern science accepts only the first 2. Pratyaksha means direct perception, paroksha means inference. But aparoksha, this was talked about by Shankaracharya. Ramanuja also talked about aparoksha as well as adhokshaja, means transcendental knowledge. And there is also a prakriti, means transcendental life. Like here we have life, we have friends, we have family, we have our society, etc. In this transcendental reality also, life is going on. It looks similar, but it is transcendental. So what is the proposal for harmony for the scientists? So A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada offered 2 axioms, perfect axiomatic truths. First is life comes from life. It will never be possible to show that ever life could come from chemicals. Second is that matter also comes from life. So this is a unified idea, or Advaya Gyan Tattva. In life, both matter and life can be united. But if you say matter, how can you explain what life is? So why do you want to focus all your attention on material sciences, on only physics and chemistry? Why not think about life? And from that life, like Schelling, he said, matter means when consciousness reduces. This is a good theory, good concept. When consciousness comes down, like we say, he is becoming jada. Jada means he can't understand things. But who is conscious, he should understand things. So this is the stress here. And one experimental work was there by Paul Webb. In this paper was published in Journal of Nutrition in, I think, American Journal, maybe 1980 or something. So he found the heat balance and mass balance doesn't work out in case of human subjects. There is some difference. And according to the variability of the different conditions, the percentage varies between, say, 3 or 8% to 23%. So where is that undetermined energy gone? So that's what we say. You cannot reduce life to chemical formulas or chemical concepts or Newton's laws. You require new concepts to explain life. So experimentally, we can also try this type of study, whether it is possible to test conservation of mass and energy in case of living phenomena. And nobody has really thought about it, but it is a good study to do. Finally, conclusions. The Vedantic aphorisms completely rejects the notion of scientific materialism, such as origin of life from chemicals. Much support for Vedantic as well as Kantian and Hegelian concepts are being inferred from the frontiers of biology, physics and chemistry. Objects cannot be thought of as existing independently of the observer. This is also a beginning conclusion of the Vedanta. The Vedantic understanding is that matter comes from life. This principle should be experimentally verified, and it will open new light on the question of origin of life and origin of matter, and will also demonstrate the inadequacy of physics and chemistry in explaining life. Life is a higher logical category and cannot be produced from matter. Rather, opposite must be true and verifiable. Thank you. And finally, I'll make one comment. Actually, in India also, in ancient times, different types of thought processes were there. They were under different schools. For example, logic was called Nyaya Shastra, and atomic theory was called Vaiseshika. There is also grammar, etymology, like we have this. Anyway, the 6 systems, but Vedanta had a unique position. Vedanta, like in other systems, if you talk about, can you show soul? or can you see God? So the answer was, these are all inferential truths. Although they accept Vedas, other systems, but they said they were inferential only. But in Vedanta, it is not only inferential, but it is directly perceptible. That's why Gita says, Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, Pavitram, Idamuttamam, Pratyakshavagam. This word has been used, Pratyaksha, directly perceptible. All these concepts are directly perceptible, but you have to follow the process of Vedanta for that. That means now you must surrender to a qualified Acharya. Ramanuja was talking about this Sharanagati. Without this, it will not be possible to directly perceive, but inferentially, you can talk about it, and a lot of things can be also demonstrated. But if you want to progress, you must come to the field of Sharanagati. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Any questions, Chairman, sir? You have a question? Please. You have a question? Okay, thank you, Swamiji. She says no. All are Vedantis, so I think they have learned more Vedanta. Thank you so much.